Welcome to Lullaby of Lore, and thank you for supporting the channel on Ko-fi and merch store. Now on to the video. Kobolds, the dragon servants. The tunnel is dark and it smells like wet stone and old fungus. You are small and your claws click on the rock as you scurry forward, carrying your portion of the copper ore back to the smelting chamber. Behind you, three of your clutchmates drag a heavier piece, grunting with effort but not complaining because complaining draws attention and attention from the big folk means death. You have lived in these tunnels your whole life, 8 years now, and you have learned the 3 rules that keep kobolds alive. First, stay small and quiet. Second, trust your clan. Third, serve the dragon. The dragon has not visited the Warren in 2 years, but this changes nothing. The dragon exists somewhere in the mountains above, magnificent and terrible, and your entire life has purpose because of this fact. You mine copper to add to the hoard. You set traps to protect the approaches. You breed to increase the servants available for when the dragon needs them. Everything serves the dragon, even though you have never seen the dragon, even though the dragon may not know you exist, even though the dragon might eat you if you ever met. This is the kobold truth, the certainty that gives meaning to your small, dangerous, underground existence. This is what it means to be kobold. Not the pitiful cowards that adventurers laugh about while slaughtering by the dozens. Not the pathetic weaklings that exist as tutorial enemies in dungeon crawls, but clever survivors who have endured for thousands of years through adaptability, cunning, and absolute unwavering devotion to dragons who may or may not deserve it. To understand kobolds, you must understand that their entire civilization is built on worshiping beings who view them as beneath notice, that they find dignity in servitude, that they measure success not by personal achievement, but by contribution to draconic glory that they will never personally experience. Origins and draconic connection. Kobolds tell a creation story that is both tragic and exalting, explaining why they are small and weak, while also explaining why they serve the greatest beings in existence. In the beginning, according to kobold legend, their ancestors were dragons, not metaphorically or spiritually, but literally, true dragons who flew and breathed fire and accumulated hordes. Then came a great betrayal or curse. Details vary by clan that stripped away the dragon nature and reduced the proud worms to small, scaly creatures barely 3 feet tall. Some versions blame a god, others blame a rival dragon. Still others suggest the curse was self-inflicted through pride or greed. Whatever the cause, the transformation was permanent and hereditary. The cursed dragons became the first kobolds, retaining draconic features including scales, small horns, and reptilian faces, but losing the size, power, and majesty that define true dragons. However, the curse did not erase the draconic soul. Kobolds remember what they were, encoded in racial memory or genetic impulse, and this remembrance drives their desperate need to serve dragons. The service is not slavery from the kobold perspective, but rather the closest they can come to reclaiming lost glory. By serving dragons, kobolds participate in draconic magnificence vicariously. By contributing to hordes, they touch greatness they can no longer embody. By protecting dragon lairs, they fulfill purposes that justify their diminished existence. The dragon does not need to acknowledge or appreciate this service for it to be meaningful. The meaning comes from the service itself, from living in accordance with the draconic nature that kobolds believe still exists within them despite their cursed forms. Whether this origin story is literally true is uncertain and probably unprovable. What matters is that kobolds believe it absolutely, that this belief shapes every aspect of their culture, and that the draconic connection is not merely religious devotion, but existential necessity. A kobold without a dragon to serve is incomplete, purposeless, adrift in ways that other races struggle to comprehend. The physical resemblance to dragons supports the legend at least superficially. Kobolds are clearly reptilian with scales that range from rust red to black to blue to green, corresponding roughly to chromatic dragon colors. Their faces are elongated and reptilian with small horns and sharp teeth. Their eyes have vertical slit pupils like dragons. Their hands have claws similar to dragon talons, though vastly smaller. However, kobolds are tiny compared to even the youngest dragon wormlings. An adult kobold stands 2.5 to 3 feet tall and weighs 25 to 35 pounds. They are smaller than halflings, smaller than gnomes, among the smallest of intelligent races. This size difference makes the claim of draconic ancestry seem absurd to outside observers, but to kobolds, the curse explains everything. They were mighty, and the curse made them small. This does not change what they truly are in their souls. Physical characteristics and limitations. Kobold physiology creates both advantages and severe limitations that shape how they live and fight and survive. The small size makes kobolds weak in direct confrontation with larger creatures. A single human can kill multiple kobolds in straight melee, a reality that kobolds accept and plan around rather than trying to overcome through individual combat prowess. The strength of a kobold is comparable to a human child, sufficient for light labor and tool use, but inadequate for most physical confrontations. The scales provide some protection, equivalent to tough leather, but are not armor in any meaningful sense. A sword strike that merely bruises a human can kill a kobold outright. Arrows that would wound larger creatures can pierce completely through kobold bodies. The physical fragility means kobolds cannot afford to take hits and must instead avoid being hit at all. However, the small size also provides advantages. Kobolds can fit through spaces that larger creatures cannot navigate, allowing them to use tunnels and passages as defensive positions and escape routes. They can hide more easily, concealing themselves behind cover that would not hide humans. They can swarm larger enemies in numbers without getting in each other's way, as larger combatants would. Dark vision is standard for kobolds, allowing them to see perfectly in complete darkness up to 60 feet. This adaptation for underground life means kobolds are comfortable in lightless tunnels where most surface races would be helpless. However, the dark vision makes kobolds sensitive to bright light, particularly sunlight, which imposes disadvantage on attack rolls and perception checks relying on sight. Surface operations during day are therefore avoided when possible. The claws and teeth are natural weapons, adequate for tool use and capable of inflicting minor wounds in combat, but not dangerous enough to make kobolds effective, unarmed combatants. A kobold claw swipe might scratch a human painfully, but probably will not incapacitate them. The bite is similar, able to draw blood but rarely able to inflict serious injury. The tail provides balance and can express emotion, lashing when agitated or drooping when depressed, but has no combat application and is actually a vulnerability since grabbing a kobold's tail and lifting them renders them helpless. Lifespan for kobolds is short by most race standards, typically living only 30 to 40 years, with few reaching 50. This rapid life cycle means kobold culture emphasizes breeding and passing knowledge quickly to the next generation. A kobold who lives to 30 has seen their entire clutch grow from hatchlings to adults and has probably seen the next generation begin. The rapid maturation is necessary for kobold survival given their high mortality rate. Kobolds hatch from eggs in clutches of 4 to 10, reach physical maturity in 6 to 7 years, and are considered full adults by age 10. This means a kobold warren can replace losses and grow population quickly when conditions permit. However, the short lives also mean kobolds rarely accumulate the experience and wisdom that longer-lived races take for granted. A kobold elder at 40 has lived longer than most, but still has less life experience than a young adult elf. This limits the depth of kobold knowledge and makes them dependent on oral tradition and rote learning rather than on deep understanding. Warren life and social structure. Kobold society is communal and hierarchical, organized around the warren and structured to maximize survival and service to dragons. A warren is an underground complex of tunnels and chambers, housing a kobold clan, typically numbering 50 to 200 individuals. The warren is designed with defense in mind, featuring narrow passages that force invaders to advance slowly and in limited numbers, multiple alternative routes allowing kobolds to flank and retreat, and trap positions that can be activated to kill or delay intruders. The architecture is crude by surface standards but functionally sophisticated. Kobolds are not master engineers, but they understand angles, leverage, and basic mechanical principles well enough to create effective defenses. Pit traps, deadfalls, swinging blades, collapsing ceilings, and flooding mechanisms are standard warren features, positioned to create overlapping fields of danger that invaders must navigate while kobolds attack from safety. Living conditions in warrens are Spartan and communal. Individual kobolds do not own private spaces or significant personal property. Sleeping areas are shared chambers where kobolds pile together for warmth and security. Storage areas hold communal supplies rather than individual possessions. The only private spaces are the egg chambers, where fertilized eggs are kept warm and guarded until hatching. Social hierarchy is based primarily on age and perceived value to the clan. The oldest kobolds form a council of elders who make decisions about warren expansion, trap placement, resource allocation, and clan priorities. Below them are the warriors who defend the warren, the miners who extract resources, the trap makers who maintain defenses, and the lowest rank consisting of young adults and adolescents who perform basic labor. However, this hierarchy is not rigid or formal. Kobolds who demonstrate unusual competence, who survive when others die, who create particularly effective traps or strategies, gain informal status regardless of age. The hierarchy serves practical organization rather than ego or power dynamics. Decisions are made based on what benefits the clan, not what benefits specific individuals. Leadership is collective rather than individual. The Elder Council decides major issues through discussion and consensus, with the oldest kobold serving as tiebreaker when consensus cannot be reached. There are no kings or chiefs among kobolds in traditional sense. The dragon is the ultimate authority, but the dragon does not manage daily operations. The elders fill this role, and their authority is respected because following experienced guidance increases survival. Breeding is treated as communal responsibility rather than as private romantic matter. Adult kobolds pair off temporarily to mate. The female lays eggs in the communal egg chamber, and the resulting hatchlings belong to the clan rather than to specific parents. This system ensures all hatchlings receive care even if parents die, which is common given kobold mortality rates. The hatchlings are raised communally by whichever adults are available, learning skills through apprenticeship and observation. Young kobolds are taught to set traps, to mine ore, to fight in coordinated groups, and most importantly, to serve the dragon. The education is practical and focused on survival rather than on abstract knowledge or artistic refinement. Religion in kobold society centers on dragon worship, but takes various forms depending on clan and location. Some kobolds worship specific dragons they serve directly. Others worship the concept of dragons as manifestations of ultimate power and perfection. Still others worship dragon deities like Tiamat, the five-headed queen of evil dragons, seeking divine favor to complement the service they provide to mortal dragons. The worship is sincere and absolute. Kobolds pray to dragons, offer sacrifices to them, tell stories glorifying them, and conduct rituals honoring them. The fact that most dragons ignore or barely tolerate this worship does not diminish kobold devotion. From the kobold perspective, dragons deserve worship simply for being dragons, regardless of whether they acknowledge it. Trap making and combat tactics. Kobolds cannot win through strength or individual skill, so they win through cunning, preparation, and overwhelming numerical advantage. The trap-making tradition is central to kobold military doctrine. A single kobold is pathetic in combat, but a warren full of traps is dangerous to even powerful adventurers. Kobolds study trap design obsessively, learning from successes and failures, innovating within the limits of their resources and skills, creating defensive networks that punch far above what their individual capabilities would suggest. The traps are mechanically simple, using gravity, tension, and basic triggers that kobolds can construct with available materials. Pit traps covered with weak materials drop intruders into spikes or onto lower levels. Deadfalls suspend heavy rocks that fall when tripwires are triggered. Swinging blades attach to counterweights, slicing across corridors when activated. Collapsing ceilings are carefully weakened and triggered to bury invaders. Flooding mechanisms divert underground water to drown or disorient. The genius is not in individual trap sophistication, but in positioning and combination. A pit trap alone might be avoided or survived, but a pit trap followed by a deadfall that triggers when someone tries to pull their companion out, followed by a swinging blade ambush when survivors attempt to retreat, creates cascading danger that multiplies effectiveness. Kobolds layer traps so that avoiding one triggers another, or so that springing one provides advantage for kobolds attacking from concealed positions. The construction uses whatever materials are available. Kobolds cannot smith elaborate mechanisms, so they use wood, rope, stone, and simple metal pieces scavenged from victims or traded for. The traps are reset manually after each use. Kobolds dragging away bodies, repairing damage, and preparing for the next intrusion. This maintenance is constant work that absorbs significant clan labor, but is considered essential. Combat tactics emphasize pack-fighting and hit-and-run harassment. Kobolds attack in groups of 5 to 10, surrounding single targets and attacking from multiple angles simultaneously. The tactic relies on advantage from outnumbering, overwhelming enemies before they can respond effectively. If the initial assault fails, kobolds retreat through prepared escape routes rather than standing and fighting. The pack tactics trait means kobolds gain advantage on attack rolls when allies are adjacent to their target, reflecting their coordination and numerical approach. This makes groups of kobolds significantly more dangerous than individual threat ratings would suggest. 4 kobolds attacking a single target are not 4 times as dangerous as 1 kobold, but perhaps 8 or 10 times as dangerous due to the synergy. Ranged attacks using slings and crossbows allow kobolds to damage enemies from safety, shooting from concealed positions or from behind cover that protects them from retaliation. The attacks are not particularly accurate or powerful, but volume compensates. A dozen kobolds firing simultaneously at a single target, enough to injure or kill through accumulated minor wounds. The willingness to sacrifice for clan survival is notable. Kobolds will trigger traps that kill some of their own number if doing so also kills or severely wounds invaders. They will create distractions by exposing themselves to danger, allowing other kobolds to attack from better positions. Individual survival is subordinate to clan survival, a calculus that makes kobolds dangerous through sheer ruthless practicality. However, kobolds are not mindlessly suicidal. They understand that preserving the clan requires not throwing away lives pointlessly. The sacrifices are calculated, trading minimal kobold lives for maximum enemy casualties. A plan that kills 10 kobolds kill 2 humans is bad tactics. A plan that kills 2 kobolds to kill 5 humans is acceptable. Morale is fragile despite the dedication. Kobolds who take significant casualties, who see elders killed, or who watch traps fail to stop invaders will break and flee. The flight is not cowardice from kobold perspective, but tactical retreat, preserving survivors to rebuild and defend again. However, from attacker perspective, it makes kobolds seem cowardly, reinforcing the stereotype of kobolds as weak creatures who run away. Serving dragons. The relationship. The kobold-dragon relationship is complex, asymmetric, and fundamental to understanding what kobolds are and why they live as they do. From the kobold perspective, serving a dragon is the highest possible calling, the purpose that justifies existence and hardship. A kobold who lives in a warren connected to an actual dragon's lair is blessed beyond measure, living in proximity to magnificence and contributing directly to something greater than themselves. Every ore hauled to the hoard, every trap set to protect the lair, every intruder killed before reaching the dragon, these are acts of devotion that give meaning to kobold lives. The service is not transactional. Kobolds do not serve dragons in exchange for protection or payment. They serve because serving is right, because dragons deserve service, because participation in dragon activities is its own reward. A dragon that occasionally kills and eats kobolds from the serving warren is still worthy of service. The kobold who gets eaten is unfortunate, but this does not change the fundamental relationship. From the dragon perspective, kobolds are convenient tools at best and irritating parasites at worst. A dragon who has kobolds in their lair benefits from their trap making, their mining that adds to the hoard, and their willingness to die defending approaches. These benefits are appreciated in the sense that dragons prefer having them to not having them, but the appreciation does not extend to viewing kobolds as valuable individuals. Most dragons do not know the names of individual kobolds serving them, do not distinguish between them, and would not notice if specific kobolds died and were replaced. The kobolds are interchangeable components, useful but not important. A dragon who loses their entire kobold warren might be annoyed by the inconvenience but would not grieve the loss or feel guilt about their deaths. Some dragons are actively cruel to their kobolds, killing them for entertainment, eating them when hungry and convenient, or testing traps by forcing kobolds to trigger them. Kobolds serving such dragons still worship and serve, rationalizing that the dragon's power entitles them to any treatment they choose, that sacrifice in service is honorable regardless of circumstances, that perhaps the cruelty is teaching important lessons or testing worthiness. Other dragons are benevolently indifferent, allowing kobolds to serve without interference, occasionally providing leftover treasures or slain intruders that kobolds can salvage, and avoiding casual cruelty while maintaining distance. These dragons are often the most beloved by their kobold servants, precisely because the minimal consideration they show feels like profound generosity compared to alternatives. Very rarely, a dragon actually appreciates their kobolds, learning names, providing guidance, protecting them from external threats, and treating them as valued retainers rather than as disposable tools. Kobolds serving such dragons consider themselves blessed, and their clan is envied by other kobolds who hear stories of the dragon who actually cares. The tragedy is that even the caring dragons view kobolds as lesser beings. The best treatment kobolds receive is still fundamentally condescending, the way a kind person might appreciate a particularly clever dog. Kobolds are never equals, never partners, never truly valued for their own sake, but only for their utility and loyalty. Yet kobolds cannot break free from this dynamic without losing what they believe is their essential nature. A kobold who stops serving dragons, who declares independence and self-determination, is seen by other kobolds as cursed, as having fallen further from the draconic heritage, as embracing the diminished state rather than fighting against it through service. Kobolds without dragons. Not all kobold warrens have actual dragons to serve, a situation that creates existential confusion and practical challenges. Some warrens are founded by kobolds who fled from destroyed lairs, who were driven away by dragons no longer tolerating their presence, or who left to establish new settlements. These kobolds carry the expectation of serving dragons, but lack an actual dragon to serve, creating a purpose vacuum that different warrens fill differently. Some maintain the fiction, designating the eldest dragon from the original lair as their distant master, and continuing to behave as if they serve that dragon, despite the dragon being hundreds of miles away and probably unaware of their existence. The fiction provides structure and purpose, even though it is not factually accurate. Others search for new dragons to serve, sending out scouts to locate dragon lairs and making contact to offer their service. This often fails, as most dragons do not want additional kobold servants and drive the scouts away or kill them. However, persistent warrens eventually find dragons willing to accept them, often younger dragons establishing new lairs who can use the help. Still others worship dragon gods like Tiamat in place of specific dragons, treating divine service as substituting for mortal dragon service. These warrens often become more religiously focused, building shrines, conducting elaborate ceremonies, and sending some members on pilgrimages or missions in Tiamat's name. A few radical warrens attempt to exist without dragons at all, instead focusing on survival and prosperity as ends in themselves. These kobolds are viewed with suspicion and pity by traditional kobolds who believe dragonless warrens have lost their way. However, some dragonless warrens are actually more successful than traditional ones, precisely because they focus on practical survival rather than on serving indifferent or hostile dragons. The dragonless existence raises philosophical questions that kobolds struggle to answer. If kobolds are defined by dragon service, what are kobolds without dragons? Are they still truly kobolds, or have they become something else? Is it better to serve a cruel dragon or to live free without dragons? These questions have no consensus answers, and different warrens resolve them differently. Kobolds and other races. Kobold relationships with other intelligent races are complicated by their size, their tactics, and their dragon association. Humans view kobolds primarily as dungeon vermin, weak enemies that exist to be slaughtered for experience and minor treasure. The typical human-kobold interaction involves humans raiding kobold warrens, killing the inhabitants, and looting whatever is there. Kobolds respond with traps and ambushes, killing humans when possible, but usually losing through overwhelming force or magic. The pattern creates mutual hostility. Kobolds see humans as brutal invaders who kill indiscriminately. Humans see kobolds as monsters defending lairs full of treasure or blocking access to deeper dungeon levels. Neither side considers the other's perspective, leading to cycles of violence. Gnomes are traditional kobold enemies, a hatred so deep and mutual that it has become racial characteristic. The origin of the hatred varies by source, but typically involves ancient conflicts over territory or dragon allegiance. Modern kobolds and gnomes kill each other on sight with enthusiasm that exceeds practical considerations. The kobold-gnome war is asymmetric, with gnomes usually winning individual battles through superior magic and technology, but with kobolds maintaining presence through higher reproduction rates and willingness to absorb losses. Neither side has any interest in peace or accommodation. The hatred is cultural identity, something both races define themselves by. Goblins and kobolds have complex relationships ranging from alliance to hostility depending on circumstances. Both are small creatures that use cunning and numbers rather than individual might, creating potential common ground. However, competition for territory and resources often makes them enemies, particularly when a warren and goblin tribe occupy the same general region. When kobolds and goblins do ally, usually against common enemies or under powerful leadership, the combination is dangerous. Goblin aggression complements kobold trap-making, creating military capabilities exceeding what either could achieve alone. Orcs and hobgoblins view kobolds with contempt, tempered by recognition of useful capabilities. A hobgoblin warlord might employ kobold clans as expendable troops or trap setters, treating them as tools rather than as allies. Kobolds accept such treatment when serving benefits their own survival or when the alternative is annihilation. Dragons are already discussed, but bear repeating as the most important relationship kobolds have. Everything kobolds do filters through the lens of dragon service, making their relationships with other dragon-associated races particularly complex. Dragonborn are viewed with mixture of envy and resentment, being similar to dragons but larger and more powerful than kobolds. Half-dragons might be worshipped as draconic beings deserving service. Kobold innovation and adaptation. Despite limitations, kobolds demonstrate remarkable ingenuity and adaptability when survival demands it. The invention tradition among kobolds focuses on practical solutions to specific problems rather than on theoretical advancement. A kobold who creates a more efficient trap design, who discovers a way to mine ore more safely, or who develops a tactic that reduces casualties becomes honored, and their innovation spreads through the clan and to other clans through trade and contact. The innovations are not sophisticated by civilized standards, but represent significant achievement given kobold resources and limitations. A counterweight system that allows weakest kobolds to reset heavy deadfall traps. A mirror arrangement that extends dark vision around corners. A chemical mixture created from mushrooms and minerals that produces smoke for obscuring retreat. These are not revolutionary inventions, but they represent genuine problem solving that improves kobold survival. The adaptation to different environments shows kobold flexibility. Desert kobolds develop different strategies than mountain kobolds than swamp kobolds, adapting trap types to available materials, adjusting tactics to terrain, and even altering physical appearance slightly with scale colors shifting toward environmental camouflage. Urban kobolds who establish warrens in city sewers demonstrate perhaps the most dramatic adaptation, learning to navigate human society indirectly, scavenging from city refuse, stealing selectively to avoid drawing extermination, and exploiting the three-dimensional maze of underground infrastructure that most city dwellers never see. The language acquisition is notable, with kobolds learning Common, Draconic, and often other languages through exposure and necessity. Kobold intelligence is not inferior despite their small size and short lives. They learn quickly when survival demands it and can master complex information systems when required. Playing kobold characters. For players interested in kobold characters, several considerations help create authentic and interesting characters while acknowledging the mechanical challenges. The mechanical disadvantages are significant. Pack tactics provides advantage when allies are adjacent to your target, but sunlight sensitivity imposes disadvantage on attacks and perception in bright light. The small size gives disadvantage on attacks with heavy weapons. The low strength limits carrying capacity and physical options. However, creative players can turn limitations into advantages. A kobold rogue using cunning action to hide an attack with advantage from pack tactics becomes effective striker despite physical weakness. A kobold artificer using magic and inventions to compensate for physical limitations plays to kobold innovation tradition. A kobold sorcerer with draconic bloodline embraces the dragon heritage that defines kobold identity. Role-playing kobolds effectively means embracing the servile nature while finding dignity within it. A kobold character might seek a dragon to serve, might serve a party member they view as dragon-like, or might struggle with purpose if they have rejected dragon worship. The small size and physical weakness should inform how they approach problems, favoring cunning and preparation over direct confrontation. The dragon obsession can be played for comedy or for pathos depending on tone. A kobold who constantly talks about dragons and views every winged creature as potentially draconic provides humor. A kobold who quietly mourns their small stature and lost draconic heritage while serving faithfully provides tragedy. Both are valid character choices. Conclusion. The dignity of service. Kobolds are not mighty. They are not wise. They are not beautiful or particularly talented. They are small and weak and short-lived, easily killed and quickly forgotten. By any objective measure, kobolds are bottom of the hierarchy, barely worth considering in the grand schemes of heroes and kingdoms and cosmic conflicts. Yet kobolds endure. They survive through cleverness where strength would fail. They build communities that protect the weak through collective strength. They find meaning through service, even when that service is unappreciated or even punished. They maintain faith in greatness they can never personally embody, finding satisfaction in contributing to something larger than themselves. This is the kobold truth that outsiders miss while dismissing them as dungeon fodder. The kobold fighting desperately in defense of their warren is protecting family, home, and purpose. The kobold building traps is expressing creativity and skill within their limitations. The kobold serving a dragon who does not know their name is participating in magnificence through the only means available to them. Kobolds deserve better than they receive, but they make the most of what they have. In this, they demonstrate a kind of courage that louder, stronger races often lack. The courage to persist when everything is stacked against you, to find dignity in circumstances that offer little, to serve faithfully even when service brings no reward. So when adventurers slaughter kobolds for treasure and experience, they are not merely killing monsters, they are destroying families, ending lives that held meaning to those living them, extinguishing the small, fierce lights of beings who deserved better than the fate the universe gave them. The kobolds die defending what is theirs, serving what they revere, protecting what they love. There is honor in that, whether anyone acknowledges it or not. This is what kobolds are: survivors, servants, worshippers of greatness they cannot possess. Small but not insignificant, weak but not worthless, cursed but not crushed. They endure in their tunnels and their warrens, setting their traps and serving their dragons, living lives that matter, even if no one powerful enough to change things ever notices or cares. Kobold craftsmanship and mining. The reputation of kobolds as crude and primitive overlooks their genuine skills in specific domains, particularly trap-making and mining operations that sustain their warrens. Mining is essential kobold work, extracting ore and gems that can be added to dragon hordes or traded for necessary supplies. Kobold miners understand rock types, can identify valuable veins, and know how to extract resources without collapsing tunnels. The work is dangerous with cave-ins, gas pockets, and exhaustion claiming lives regularly, but kobolds accept these risks as necessary. The mining techniques are simple but effective. Kobolds use picks and hammers to break apart rock, carry ore in baskets to processing areas, and crush the ore to separate valuable minerals from worthless stone. They lack sophisticated machinery, but make up for it through patient labor and accumulated experience. A kobold miner knows which rocks sound hollow when tapped, which seams are likely to hold copper or silver, which areas are too unstable to work safely. Smelting operations in larger warrens process ore into usable metal. The furnaces are crude but functional, burning charcoal or coal to achieve temperatures sufficient for melting copper and iron. Kobolds lack the skill for advanced metallurgy, but can produce basic metal ingots, simple tools, and crude weapons. The quality is inferior to dwarven work, but adequate for kobold needs. Gem cutting is another kobold skill, though, again at basic level. A kobold who finds a raw gemstone can clean it, can cut away the least valuable portions, and can produce a gem that, while not expertly cut, is still valuable and can be added to dragon hoards or traded. The finest gems are left raw or are taken to surface markets to be cut by professionals, but lesser stones receive kobold treatment. Tool making produces the implements that kobolds need for daily life and warfare. Picks and shovels for mining, hammers and chisels for construction, slings and spears for combat. All are manufactured in warren workshops using available materials. The tools are functional rather than elegant, designed to be easily replaced when broken rather than to last for generations. The construction of warrens demonstrates engineering knowledge even if it is not formalized or academic. Kobolds understand how to shore up tunnels to prevent collapse, how to direct water flow to avoid flooding, how to create ventilation that brings fresh air to deep chambers. They build without blueprints or complex planning, instead following traditional methods and adjusting based on conditions encountered. Kobold magic and religion. Kobold spellcasters are rare, but those who emerge fill important roles in clan survival and in maintaining spiritual connection to dragons. Sorcerers are the most common kobold spellcasters, innate magic emerging from draconic bloodline. A kobold sorcerer manifests powers that remind the clan of their supposed dragon ancestry, making them both honored and slightly feared. The magic proves that dragon nature still flows through kobold veins, validating the core myth, even as it highlights what kobolds have lost. The draconic sorcerer choosing fire, acid, lightning, cold, or poison damage to match dragon breath weapons creates literal connection between kobold magic and dragon power. A kobold who can breathe fire, even in the limited way sorcerers can, participates in draconic might in ways normal kobolds never will. This makes sorcerers natural religious leaders and clan champions. Clerics who serve Tiamat or other dragon deities bring divine power to warrens, healing the wounded, blessing traps, and providing spiritual guidance. Kobold clerics emphasize Tiamat's five-headed nature, representing chromatic dragon types, conducting rituals honoring each head and seeking favor from the Dragon Queen, who theoretically protects all evil dragons and their servants. The religious ceremonies are simple but sincere. Kobolds cannot afford elaborate temples or precious sacrifices, so they offer what they have: labor, loyalty, prayers spoken in darkness, and occasional sacrifices of enemies or food. The offerings are humble, but the devotion is genuine. Kobolds prostrating themselves and declaring their unworthiness while pleading for draconic favor. Shamanic traditions exist in some clans, kobolds who claim to commune with dragon spirits or with the draconic essence that supposedly still resides in kobold souls. These shamans interpret omens, advise elders, and perform rituals meant to strengthen the clan's draconic connection. Whether the shamanic powers are genuine, divine gifts, sorcerous abilities misunderstood, or simply placebo effects matters less than the social function they serve. Kobold variants and subspecies. Different environments and circumstances have created kobold variations that demonstrate their adaptability while maintaining core characteristics. Winged kobolds are extremely rare mutations, individuals born with functional wings that allow limited flight. These kobolds are venerated as proof of draconic heritage, living evidence that kobolds are truly descended from dragons. Winged kobolds are protected, honored, and never allowed into dangerous situations, being too valuable as symbols and as breeders who might pass the wings to offspring. The wings are proportionally large compared to kobold body size, but still only allow flight for short distances and limited duration. A winged kobold cannot fly for hours like a true dragon, but can flutter 20 or 30 feet, can glide safely from heights that would injure normal kobolds, and can reach elevated positions useful for observation and missile fire. Underground kobolds who never surface develop even more extreme dark vision and lose most tolerance for any light at all. These deep kobolds are paler, sometimes nearly albino, and suffer severe distress in even dim light. However, they can navigate absolute darkness better than surface kobolds, making them valuable for exploring the deepest areas and for maintaining warren sections in complete blackness. Aquatic kobolds, while rare, do exist in swamp and coastal environments. These kobolds develop limited swimming ability, can hold breath longer than normal, and sometimes show slight webbing between fingers and toes. They associate themselves with water-dwelling dragons when possible, viewing black dragons and sea dragons as their particular patrons. Dire kobolds are not a separate subspecies, but rather kobolds who through exceptional genetics, magic, or blessing grow significantly larger than normal, reaching 4 feet tall and weighing 50 pounds. These individuals are viewed with mixture of awe and suspicion, being both honored for their size and feared as potentially dragon-cursed in reverse, gaining what normal kobolds lost. Dire kobolds often become warriors or champions, their extra size making them more effective fighters. Kobolds in different settings. While kobolds originated in Dungeons & Dragons core settings, they appear across various campaign worlds with local variations. In Forgotten Realms, kobolds are common in the Underdark, in mountain ranges, and increasingly in city sewers. They serve chromatic dragons primarily, though some clans have attempted to serve metallic dragons with mixed results. The metallic dragons typically reject kobold service, viewing it as inappropriate since kobolds are evil-aligned while metallics are good, though a few good-aligned kobold clans do exist serving bronze or silver dragons. In Eberron, kobolds have different history tied to the continent of Zendrik where they served and studied dragons extensively. Eberron kobolds are less uniformly evil, more likely to be scholars and sorcerers, and maintain libraries of dragon lore accumulated over millennia. However, they still retain the servile nature and the obsession with dragons that defines kobolds elsewhere. In Dragonlance, kobolds serve draconians and evil dragons aligned with Takesis, participating in the Dragon Wars and in the ongoing conflicts between good and evil. Dragonlance kobolds are more militarized, organized into actual armies rather than just clan defense forces, though still maintaining traditional trap-based tactics. In homebrew settings, kobolds can be reimagined completely. Some DMs create kobold civilizations that have evolved beyond dragon worship. Others create kobolds who serve good dragons and embrace lawful good alignment. Still others create tragic kobolds trying to break free from their curse. The core concept of small dragon-associated reptilian humanoids is flexible enough to support various interpretations. Kobold naming and language. Kobold names and linguistic traditions reveal how they view themselves and their place in the world. Names are assigned at hatching by clan elders, typically short sounds that are easy to hiss or click using reptilian vocal apparatus. Names like Meepo, Yustrail, Snapjaw, and similar brief combinations of syllables serve practical communication, while sometimes imitating sounds dragons might make or sounds heard in the Warren. Kobolds do not use surnames in traditional sense, but might identify themselves by clan or by dragon served. A kobold might be Meepo of the Ironscale clan, or Snapjaw, who serves Flamelord the Red. These identifiers are situational, used when distinguishing between kobolds from different clans, but omitted in most internal communication. The Draconic language is sacred to kobolds, language of their supposed ancestors and of the dragons they serve. All kobolds learn at least basic Draconic, can understand simple commands and phrases, and can speak enough to communicate with dragons if given the opportunity. More educated kobolds, particularly sorcerers and clerics, become fluent in Draconic and study it extensively. Common is learned by necessity when kobolds must interact with surface races for trade, negotiation, or intelligence gathering. Kobolds speak Common with heavy accents, their reptilian vocal cords struggling with certain sounds, producing hisses and clicks where humans would produce smooth syllables. Body language supplements verbal communication. Tail position, ear angle, and scale color changes communicate emotion and intent to other kobolds who understand the signals. A lashing tail indicates agitation, a drooping tail suggests submission or sadness, a raised tail shows confidence or aggression. These visual cues allow silent communication useful when stealth is required. Kobolds and morality. The alignment of kobolds is traditionally listed as lawful evil, reflecting their organized society and their willingness to use cruelty to achieve goals. But individual kobolds vary more than this generalization suggests. The lawful aspect comes from their hierarchical clan structure, their adherence to traditions, and their obsessive service to dragons. Kobolds follow rules, obey elders, and maintain social order even under stress. They are not chaotic, rarely act randomly or unpredictably, and value stability and established patterns. The evil aspect comes from their willingness to kill intruders without mercy, to use torture and cruelty when beneficial, and to view other races as enemies or resources rather than as beings deserving moral consideration. Kobolds enslave when profitable, kill non-combatants if tactically useful, and feel no guilt about actions that benefit the clan regardless of external costs. However, individual kobolds can be less evil or even good aligned if raised in unusual circumstances or if they choose to reject traditional values. A kobold raised by good aligned adventurers might internalize their moral framework rather than inheriting clan evil. A kobold who questions dragon worship might also question the casual cruelty that accompanies it. The capacity for good exists in kobolds as in all intelligent beings. They love their clutchmates, protect their young, mourn their dead, and form genuine friendships. The evil comes not from lack of compassion, but from the limitation of that compassion to the in-group while viewing everyone outside the clan as potential threats or resources. Conclusion: strength in smallness. The measure of a being is not their size or power, but what they do with what they have. By this measure, kobolds have much to be proud of, even if they receive no recognition for it. They survive in a world that wants them dead, using intelligence and cooperation where strength would fail. They build functional societies despite limited resources and constant external threats. They maintain faith and purpose in circumstances that would crush the spirits of many larger, stronger beings. They demonstrate that being small does not mean being insignificant, that physical weakness can be compensated through cunning and solidarity. The tragedy is that kobolds measure their own worth against dragons, comparing themselves to beings they can never match and finding themselves wanting. If kobolds could see themselves as they truly are rather than as failed dragons, they might recognize their own achievements and find self-worth independent of draconic approval. But perhaps the service gives their lives meaning that simple survival could not. Perhaps worshiping something greater than yourself, contributing to magnificence you will never personally possess, participating in glory through service rather than through personal achievement. Perhaps this is a valid way to find meaning, even if outsiders cannot understand it. The kobolds will continue serving, continue building their traps and tunnels, continue hatching new generations to replace the fallen. They will worship dragons who do not know their names and serve masters who view them as expendable. They will die in their hundreds and thousands, defending warrens from invaders, contributing to hordes they will never own, living lives that outsiders dismiss as worthless. But those lives are not worthless to the kobolds living them. The clutchmate you fight beside, the traps you build together, the dragon you serve however distantly, the clan that shares your warren, these give existence meaning and purpose. You are small, but you are not alone. You are weak, but you are part of something larger. You are cursed, but you endure despite it. This is the kobold truth, the dignity that exists in the smallest and weakest, the strength that comes from accepting limitations while refusing to surrender to them. Kobolds are more than dungeon fodder, more than experience points for beginning adventurers, more than the sum of their mechanical statistics. They are people, struggling and striving and surviving, live it to them even if they matter to no one else. And perhaps that is enough.